Welcome to another episode of the BrainFood Show. I'm Simon. Joined with me today is David. Do you like this? I'm trying out a very professional intro where I actually say our names. I thank people for listening. Thank you for listening. It's a slight change of tack. How are you today?
I'm doing well. You?
Very well. I'm not sure when these episodes will go out, but we last spoke, 2 days ago when we recorded the last episode. So this is very soon after that. It's a treat to be able to do 2 of these episodes in such a short amount of time. 2
more in the next couple of days. So that'll be good.
Yeah. I do like I think people should appreciate, which sounds a bit, I don't know, that doesn't sound quite right. You don't have to appreciate anything, dear listener. By having sponsors on these shows, it does give us quite a you guys have to make 4 episodes in January because otherwise you breach this contract that you signed about making these episodes. So I find it quite motivational. So there you go.
It's been a really busy time though. So that's why the delay.
It has. January. Well, I complain about December, particularly on YouTube, because everyone knows it's the biggest month. But now I believe January is also not for ads, but because no one seems to make an effort on YouTube in January because everyone knows the ad rates are lower. If you make an effort on YouTube in January, it's much easier to get videos to do rather well because there's less videos competing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then, of course, I am also moving the headquarters of Today I Found Out to the other side of Washington State.
How's that going?
Present. It's going.
Have you found a place? I know you were house hunting not like this just weekend past, but the one before, right?
Yeah. It's coming along. Probably won't be completely over there until probably late February, but getting there.
It blows my mind. We've talked about this privately. How quickly you Americans move house.
Oh yeah,
you were kind of January. I'm thinking about moving. End of February, I moved. It took me, and you're not just talking about renting, but like purchase and all of this stuff. It took me. Mm-hmm. I found a place. I hadn't, and was like, yes, I want to buy this apartment. I wasn't there until like 9 months later, and this would be fairly typical, I think.
No, yeah, you can move, especially if you're just renting. You can move like almost instantly here.
Wow,
if you like. Very quickly, you find a place, sign a lease the next day, and then you go.
I'm jealous of that. I think renting is definitely easier, but even purchasing, it seems for you guys is quite a faster process.
It can be quite quick, especially if you have good credit and all that sort of business.
Fun. Tell me, man, what are we talking about today? Are we doing the kind of quick fact, a word from our wonderful sponsors, and then what's the main subject?
Yeah, this one is sort of a bonus fact episode of basically looking at a lot of different common animal-related myths. We're going to start with that, and then the next episode, I think, will be a lot of funny animal mating things, that's going to be a good one. And
Speaking of animal-related myths, how's our video on Richard Gere's gerbil doing?
Oh, yeah, I haven't edited that one yet, but
I'm excited to do this.
Get to that.
And by excited, I mean slightly dreading.
Yeah.
Take it away, man. Tell me
All right.
Tell me today's quick fact.
So quick fact. We're going to start with a quick fact on a bonus fact episode. So they're all kind of quick facts, but this one's even quicker and actually animal related as well. So 2 studies, one at Ataturk University in Turkey in 1991 and one at University of Manchester in England in 2006.
I get the feeling I've been to Ataturk.
Really?
I took a big road trip in Turkey a couple of years ago, and I think that's one of the places I went through. But I could be entirely wrong. If it's not in the west of Turkey, then I'm entirely wrong. But the name seems very, very familiar to me. Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. So in any event, these 2 studies, they showed that dogs and cats are usually either right or left pawed.
Oh. So, okay. Because they starting with the right and no, it's a bad joke.
So starting with cats, the Ataturk University one shows that a slight majority of cats are right pawed, so about 50%, and then 10% are ambidextrous, and then the remaining 40% favor their left paw. And so that, I don't know, that just seems weird. You don't really think about your cat, having a preference.
No, that's true. And let me be honest, man, probably never will again.
Well, you don't have pets. So.
That's true. But it's like, I wonder which paw he favors. I would love to get a cat, but my wife is allergic to. She's slightly allergic to dogs because she's had a dog growing up, and she couldn't put together we'd go to her parents' house and she'd pet the dog and stuff, and she'd get really dry hands. And eventually we put it together. you're probably allergic to dogs. So she went to have one of those allergy tests. Yeah, it turns out she's allergic to cats much more than dogs. But so now I'm a little bit sad because I love cats.
Yeah, cats are the best.
Yeah, I heard the Russian blue is kind of hypoallergenic, but I don't know. Like hypoallergenic doesn't necessarily mean allergen free, right?
Yeah, or one of the really creepy Sphinx cats, maybe.
Oh no, that's weird.
Yeah, they totally look weird.
I don't want to be your catist, but those are not right.
Yeah, no. And then so moving on to
they
dogs.
Look like something that should be in ancient Egypt and should have stayed in ancient Egypt.
Yeah. So the University of Manchester study, they looked at the dogs, and it turns out dogs are about evenly split, 50% left pod, 50% right pod, and they found a statistically insignificant number were ambidextrous. So on top of the animals, these studies showing that these dogs and cats are right or left pod, it turns out gender seems to be the distinction there, with female cats and dogs typically having their right paw be the dominant, and the males are usually left dominant. But really interestingly, that if you spay or neuter the animal at a very early age, the distinction goes away.
I don't see it in the notes here, so I don't know if we know, but like, why? Is there and has anyone speculated? No, nothing.
No, I mean, clearly it must have something to do with some hormone or something or other.
Yeah, it's really curious.
Yeah.
Did we do a video about left-handedness at one point and why this... Are you left-handed or am I imagining that?
You just think I am, perhaps, because I'm always using a left-handed mouse, and this completely just has to do with bench pressing, it turns out.
What?
So I found that I couldn't bench press. Like there was this muscle in under not the main bicep, but the other one that just was always like sore, like a pulled muscle almost, but only ever noticed when I was bench pressing. And so I just couldn't. And so one day I was like, all right, screw it. I'm just going to bench press anyway and see what happens, like a normal weight. And then of course I hurt that muscle pretty good, and it took like a month to get better. But what I noticed was when it was hurt all the time, when I would hold the mouse, it was always engaged, and so it would like just kind of be sore. And so with my right hand, so I switched to left-handed mouse, and that solved the problem within like a month, and I could bench press.
Isn't that now going to screw up your left arm?
You'd think so, but so far so good. I don't know.
There you go. You could switch to a trackpad or something.
Yeah,
you like death gripping that mouse?
I don't know. I tried different like angles and like different, the height of the armrest and everything. Nothing seemed to fix it. Well, like when I actually heard it, because it was like sore all the time when I was using my mouse. And so I was trying different stuff. Nothing seemed to work except for just switching to left-handed mouse. And now that seems to have solved the problem. And so far so good on the left, whatever muscle is in there on the bicep.
Cool. I didn't even know there were muscles under the biceps. I definitely don't have those.
Well, because it's a bicep, so...
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Smart. Just before we crack on with the rest of today's episode, I do want to particularly thank Wix for being the sponsor of this show. Now, Wix allows you to create a website for your own personal brand, your business. Maybe you're getting married and you want a website for that. You can do that as well. Whatever else you might be thinking of, Wix can deliver you a website. Now, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about Wix before. You know that we used it to build our website for this show, which is called BrainFood.fm, or more, that's the URL you can go to and you can see it. And that's the best thing to do. Even if you're on a mobile phone right now, why not just whip out your phone? Head on over to BrainFood.fm and see what I'm talking about. It's all mobile friendly, which I didn't even know when I was building the website. I built it all on my desktop computer. And then I thought maybe I'd have to change something to make it mobile compatible. But no, Wix is that advanced. It does it all automatically. They have a bunch of templates. They managed to match the colors, the white, the red, and the black of this show, which you can see in our logo and stuff like that. And they applied it to this template. So everything looks like it's very customized, but it's actually just very click and drag, and everything's super easy to set up. What we did, because we have a website for a podcast, is we added this thing called the podcast tool, which is in Wix's arsenal of advanced features. I clicked on that, I added it, I pasted in a URL to our podcast, and all of a sudden I've got a podcast feed on the homepage listing all of our recent episodes. That updates automatically. We just upload it to our podcast hosting, and our Wix website automatically grabs it and puts it out to people. So you can just go there and see and listen to all of the new episodes. But maybe you're not a podcaster. You're probably not a podcaster. I mean, maybe you are, but you're probably not. But maybe you're a photographer and you need a beautiful gallery to show off your work. Maybe you run some sort of store, or you got something to sell and you want an online shop. Well, you can do that with Wix. Or like I said, maybe you're just getting married and you want to share some information about venues and dress codes and wedding stuff. You can do that as well with Wix. It's all easy to do. Like I said, it looks great on a mobile or a desktop, whatever you want. Like I said, just go check out our website, brainfood.fm. You'll see that I made this. It's super professional, didn't take long at all. It's all very easy. And you can even get unlimited pages and top grade hosting for free with Wix. You don't have to pay for anything, but you can upgrade to one of their premium plans, which is what we did, and you get a whole bunch more. And that just starts at $5 a month. So what you need to do is go to wix.com/go/brainfood and get started. Again, that's wix.com/go/brainfood to get started. That supports the show, all of that good stuff. Let's get back to the episode. So what do we I know it's a lot of bonus facts. These are all animal related stuff today. Cool.
Yep.
What's first?
And we're going to start with whale blowholes. And so if you've ever seen like Finding Nemo or just, I mean, this is depicted all the time, and you can also just see it.
What a surprise.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
I don't really like animated like I haven't seen Shrek. I don't think I've really seen any animated movie. Just as an adult, I just never really got into it. The good news is when I have kids, I'm going to have a lot of animated movies to watch. Hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. Just for like, without kids, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is amazing.
You've told me about this before, yeah.
And then with kids, I personally think Tangled is the best of the bunch.
I don't know that.
But yeah, it's a good one. Rapunzel story. It's different from most of the other Disney movies in that I feel like there's a lot of depth with the characters. That's not, mostly they're one-dimensional in most of the Disney movies, and it's a pretty simple story, a little bit more realism, I guess, in some respects. I don't know. I like that one. I didn't like it the first time I saw it, but then now that I've watched it like 50 times, I really like it.
Kids and their desire to watch things on repeat.
Yeah. And doing that, you start to notice like the background of Tangled is amazing. It's like they painted it almost, like that doesn't really seem computer animated, and you don't notice that on the first watching. But if you just pay attention to the background
on watching 47, you're desperately searching for anything new. And the problem with animated ones, you like when I'm in the cinema and I'm stuck watching a boring movie or something I'm really not engaged in, I just start hunting for errors. That's how I get through it. I'll just be looking for any reflection of a camera in a mirror, like the boom mic coming into the frame, anything. Yeah. It's all I'm doing. Sorry, we were also, by the way, I still haven't seen The Princess Bride, so I think the odds of me seeing the Meatballs movie is quite low.
Better than The Chance of Meatballs. It's a good. It's a classic. The second one's awful, but the first one is really good. The second one clearly showed that the makers had no clue what was good about the first one. It's like they accentuated all the wrong things to make like a really bad movie. Either way,
is there a Princess Bride too?
No, there is not.
Disappointing. No. I'd probably see that.
It is actually. I would totally watch that. That could be kind of funny. Either way, so going back to that,
these blowholes.
Yeah, if you've ever watched even like a video of the whales, they surface and then they blow out, and it looks like they're spouting a column of water. And this is like a critical part of the Finding Nemo story. But the fact is that they aren't spouting any water whatsoever, because that would be really bad for them, because that's, if they had water in their lungs, that's not so good a thing. And that is their nose hole, basically. And so, the other interesting thing about this is in the Finding Nemo, right? The fish, they go from the mouth to there and get blown out the blowhole, but unlike humans and things, the trachea of the whale is not connected to the esophagus, so there's actually no path from the mouth to the. So they would have just gotten eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So if this isn't water, why does it always look like water when the whales surface and blow out? And it turns out it's just, if you think about it, the whale's body heat they're quite warm, and they're blowing out this really warm air on a really usually fairly cool, an ocean surface. So they blow it out, and the water just condenses the air just condenses into water quite quickly once it leaves, and so it looks like a spout of water. And it's also noteworthy that there is actually mucus and stuff mixed in as well. So it is Lovely. A nose. So they're kind of blowing their nose a little bit there. But it also, interesting, just kind of a little side thing here, is you can actually, if you're an experienced whale watcher, can often tell what kind of whale it is just by the shape of that sort of mist that's coming out. And it turns out the
Really?
humpback, yeah. So the humpback whale, for instance, it looks more like a column typically, and like orcas' spouts are usually kind of like that, like bushy, like it kind of spreads out like that. And then gray whales actually have 2 blowholes, and they're positioned in such a way that it almost makes like a heart-shaped spout when they come up.
Gray whales, the romantics of whales.
Yeah. Oh, and that's another inaccuracy of the Finding Nemo is the humpback whale. They show there only has 1 blowhole, but as a rule, the baleen whales, which the humpback is, they have 2 blowholes, and so they do indeed, and they only show 1 in the movie.
Wow. We shouldn't become film critics. Can you imagine this on Rotten Tomatoes? Like Finding Nemo.
No, I'm definitely
2 stars, riddled with scientific inaccuracies.
Flick Facts is a channel that for years I've been wanting to get going and never have time. And this is like, I have several series planned for this channel. And like one of them is to kind of just go over the things and look for just
destroying Finding Nemo.
Yeah, that's just one series, one of many that plan for that channel once I get it going eventually.
Yeah. Do they do this on, there was that channel, is it Cinema Sins? Are they still, they haven't come up in my feed for ages.
No, yeah, they're still around.
Do they do that kind of stuff, or do they kind of?
No, they're just joking around, kind of
cool.
You know,
they don't take it seriously at all.
No, not at all. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so another interesting to note is the toothed sperm whale actually has. What's interesting about this one is the blowhole is not on the top of its head, but on the left side of its body. And what makes this even more interesting is the right side of the body does not have a blowhole, but they do have a fully developed nasal passage right underneath. There's just no hole to it. And so it's just sort of this vegetable.
It's like the appendix of the whale.
Yeah, it's just like yeah, exactly. So it presumably at some point there was an opening there, and just
or maybe at some point in the future there will be.
No,
wait, do we know that?
No,
do we know that?
Well, I could see why. Well, you can see why one might close off, because if they're having to roll up on their side to breathe out of the one, and then there's really no need to roll over to the other side to breathe out of the other.
Could just be like we don't really need 2 kidneys, but we have one as like a redundancy in case, I don't know, like a little fish gets stuck in there or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's realistic. Or what's that stuff that floats around in the ocean that's worth a fortune? We did a video about it.
Ambergris or something. Something like that.
Maybe a big thing of ambergris would get stuck in there.
Yeah. So speaking of this nostril thing, I just thought that reminded me of something we covered a long time ago, but never on the podcast, so I'm going to mention it here, is that 85% of humans actually only breathe through 1 nostril at a time. And this is probably something most people don't ever notice, but it is happening all the time.
Testing it right now. Right now, it's my right. Mm-hmm. This morning, when I was having my coffee and I tested this, it was my left. Mm-hmm.
Nice. When you're reading the notes.
Yep.
Yeah. And it turns out this switches, it's a cyclical fashion, and it switches usually in most people about once every 4 hours, but it can vary a little bit based on what you're doing and on your body position. So if you're, for instance, if you're laying down, like you're going to sleep or something, and you're laying on your left side, then it'll usually after about 10 or 15 minutes, it'll, the right nostril will open up. If it wasn't already. And similarly, if you roll over and there's nasal congestion can also affect it. And you can just plug one nostril and just keep it plugged for a while, and eventually your body will open up the other one. And it turns out...
Am I right in thinking this is it works like a dick?
Yeah, exactly. There's erectile tissue in your nose.
I remember this from the video.
Yeah, and it's just
You're
like
getting a nose boner.
A penis or a clitoris. Almost, I think more like a clitoris would be more accurate because the size.
Yeah, but I don't have a reference point for one of those.
Yeah. So it just swells up on one side, and then it shrinks and swells up on the other side. So that is what's happening there.
Yeah, I remember that well. I think that was probably one of the things when I was recording, and I might have had a bit of a laugh, and then I had to compose myself and carry on.
So going back to animals and whales particularly, so the humpback whale in Finding Nemo, another error there was that it's depicted having a uvula, and whales don't have those. And it turns out almost no creature on Earth, except for humans, has a uvula.
What's a uvula?
The little dangly thing in the back of your throat.
We've done a video about that as well. right?
Yeah, and so baboons, it turns out, are one of the only other animals known to have these, and they just have like a little one. It's not really, not like the humans where it's like, this dangly thing down there. So it turns out humans, and because of this, it's actually thought it might kind of be something to do with speech and stuff, like in aid, because it does seem to aid a little bit, particularly people who don't have it sometimes have a little more nasally talk and stuff like that. So kind of closing off the passageway, helping the soft palate do that. But either way, so what do we actually know that the uvula actually does? And it turns out, so among other things, it helps moisten the back of your throat. It turns out there's lots of little glands in there that, basically just emit saliva and stuff out, and kind of when you're talking and stuff, it kind of gets vibrated and thrown all around on your throat and stuff. And this is something like people who have this removed, they complain they have frequent problems with dry throat. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing that does. And then as I said before, it helps the soft palate seal off the passageway between your throat and your nose, which when you're swallowing, speak and stuff, which is particularly important because if you don't have a good seal there when you're swallowing, you can actually get food and liquid and stuff up your nose, which isn't ideal.
Not the best.
Yeah, and otherwise you can also, when you're talking and stuff, get the nasally sound, like we said. And it also is known to aid in the gag reflex. It's one of the parts of the back of the throat that does that, which is quite handy if you have something dangling down that helps, so nothing can just
like
fall
a vomit
back
button.
through. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as with all its other functions, it's not completely necessary, and you can have it removed, and some people do occasionally, and not necessarily have any major problems. So, yeah.
Well, I after we did the video, I remember going to the bathroom, and because I genuinely didn't know if I had one of these. I was like, I'm pretty sure I do. I'm just going to open my mouth and double check. Because when I was a kid, I had, I'm sure it's completely unrelated, but I had those tonsils and adenoids taken out. And I wasn't sure if that was maybe next to the tonsils or part of the tonsils or something. I was like, oh no, I got one of those.
Yeah.
So,
Still, some people do.
Throat, so.
Yeah, some people do have to have it removed for various reasons. But I think there was some tribe in Africa or something that, if I remember, that actually has them removed as like a ritualistic thing.
Yeah, I
they
remember
do.
this.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact details now, but
this is the perfect time for we got a YouTube channel. Definitely check out our video on that dangly thing at the back of your throat, which I think is the actual title of the video. So if you Google it, it'll come up.
So moving on to goldfish. And so a common idea is that goldfish just have a 3-second memory, or just really bad memories that are often, depicted in animations as being stupid. And that's just something people say. But it turns out goldfish are actually really smart as fish go. So they can actually remember things. There's been studies that show they can remember stuff as much as a year later, stuff they're trained to do or stuff like that. And it's scientists. This one is funny, I think, just because scientists have done an actual awful lot of study on goldfish and their memories and their abilities.
Yeah, chasing those Nobel Prizes.
Yeah, they have done stuff like teach goldfish how to play a little goldfish version of soccer, for instance, or football. Yeah, do the limbo, another one. Push various levers. Of course, that one's easy. Just,
How the limbo is that thing where you got to go under that pole backwards, right?
Yeah,
where you How does a fish do that? Does it even have a waist?
I presume they, have it, I don't know, roll upside down and swim underneath or something. Either way, they also, turns out goldfish also have a really good sense of time. So they did that, with various studies where they'll feed them at certain times of day, and then they observe whether the fish start to anticipate it at the time of day. Turns out they do. Goldfish have been shown to be able to recognize their masters, and they even pick their favorite. It's usually the one if you're the one who feeds them, they usually like you, and they can get so comfortable around that person that you can even sometimes just start putting your hand in and actually touching them, and they won't mind. Whereas if you get a stranger who does the same thing, they'll hide, and so they basically just been shown to be able to recognize faces and things. And blind goldfish, and yes, there have been studies done with blind goldfish, that they can learn to respond to the voice of their owner in the same way, where they get very comfortable with that, but you put a strange voice in and they'll, go hide and stuff. So kind of interesting.
Now I'm feeling guilty, having a goldfish in a fish tank. Why did I not be able to remember that word? In a fish tank and not having anything for them to do, because you're like, oh, every 3 seconds they forget. So that's okay.
Yeah. And
apparently not. They were dying of boredom.
Yeah, that classic goldfish bowl is definitely not recommended because they do actually die pretty quickly in there of like, just if you give them stuff to entertain themselves. So like a nice big tank, and it's also recommended you move stuff around in the tank, give them lots of activities and stuff to do. And it turns out they tend to live a lot longer that way. So they do seem to, just whatever, just floating there, nothing to do, nothing to look at. I don't know, give them some TV to watch maybe.
Maybe. It'd be blurry though. Oh no, that's just us. We can't see underwater.
Yeah.
Should know that.
Oh, another interesting experiment they did was this one actually they were looking into, so, you have the problem with like farmed fish and stuff. There's various problems with that. And it's really hard to grow fish that way. And so they thought, what if we train goldfish, it turns out, what if we train them to come to a certain song and then they'll eat, right? And then we'll release the fish into the water and then see if they come back. And it turns out about 6 months later, they played the song under the water around where they released. And it turns out they did get fish to come back. And so it was kind of an interesting thing, thinking they were going to get fed or whatever.
They'll just release all the thousands of millions of fish. Let them out into the ocean. They get nice and big. Dinner time for us.
yeah, pretty much. That's the general idea. But of course, that's probably not very practical to train lots of fish that way. But either way.
Yeah. Also, if you work in this industry, whatever song they choose, you're going to end up really hating.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Days of listening to the same song.
Yep. So moving on from goldfish back to dogs and cats. So the common thing people say is that dogs and cats are colorblind and can only see black and white. And it turns out, no, dogs and cats can both see color just fine. It is funny though, because the reason, particularly cats, one of the big studies that showed that, cats are definitely colorblind was a 1915 study at the University of Colorado that just, I think, epitomizes cats being cats. And it's not really clear why this happened, but so they did a study where they took two jars, and one they put gray paper around, and the other they put various colored papers around, and they would show these to the cats, and if you touch the colored jar with the nose or paw, they would then give it a little treat, a little tiny fish. And if they touch the gray jar, they get nothing. And so they did this over 18 months of a study and 100,000 recorded, documented tries to see if the cats could figure out which one was the color one and which one the other. Like, presumably, they would just keep hitting the color one, so they keep getting the fish. And it turns out, no, it was a 50-50. It was basically is what they came out with. It was just completely...
Are we talking the same cats trying to be trained to do this?
I mean, lots of cats, obviously.
But not 100,000 individual cats for the first time. No. So you're training... Aren't cats smart?
Cats are quite intelligent. But it turns out that for the odds they got was it's just 50-50, which is the odds in the first place. So they determined, yes, cats cannot see color. They must be colorblind, or else they'd always pick the colored one. And so this just became like accepted fact for a long time, largely because of this study. I mean, that's a big sample size. It's not like there was a small sample size they were dealing with. But it turns out that this seemed odd because it was, cats have the cones and rods, so why can't they see color if that's the problem? So, of course, there's been further studies, and they looked at, more recently, they had like one study where they used electrodes and stuff on the brain to, observe what's happening in the cat's brain when they see different shades of colors. And it turns out the brain did respond, and they seem to be able to see the colors. And then there's been further studies that have also showed that, yes, definitively cats can distinguish between colors. And so, but why did this other study, show something quite different? And it's not really clear at all what
cats
happened with that study.
With us,
screwing with the researchers, just being cats. But yeah, so that particular study has actually been repeated, and it turns out that it was in the 1960s and it turns out the cats, they did find that, yes, they could eventually distinguish, but was interesting about it was that it took almost 1,500 tries per cat to learn which one to pick. And then once they learned it, they did it. And that seemed odd. Like you say, cats are smart. Why did it take them so long to figure it out? Yeah. And it just kind of the general idea is maybe that cats in their day-to-day lives colors are kind of meaningless to them. They don't really need to pay attention or something. And so maybe they just don't, whatever in their brain doesn't really look at it as something to look at first, and so it took a long time to train them. Or of course it could just be cats being cats and just like, whatever, I don't care.
Gosh, that is curious. Like something you just think is so obvious to us. Almost the most basic of tests, identifying different colors, is just irrelevant to a cat's brain.
Yeah, it's just like, I'm not going to look at that detail because it's never been particularly relevant to me before. And I mean, they are nocturnal, so everything's, kind of black and white at night anyway. So, you could see maybe. There was another study that showed actually cats are one of the few animals that preferred to get their food for free, with no effort. Most animals, it turns out, like to do something for it. So this is sort of interesting because, I don't know. In this case, I guess they did have to touch the jar with their paw. Maybe that was just a little too much effort.
Us and the cats, I feel this would be.
Oh, one interesting thing though, it has been found that cats don't see red very well, red colors, so red shades, but they have no problems with blues and greens. So that is one way they're like partially colorblind, but they're not, like as is commonly said, only see black and white and whatnot. Same type of experience run on dogs, these experiments, and dogs, I don't know, maybe just because they like to please. They've been, bred to please humans for a long time.
Yeah.
They have no such trouble. They learn quite quickly which to do. And even though it is noted that dogs see about the vibrant, they have a lot fewer cones than humans. And so it's thought that they see colors a lot less vibrantly than we do. But they had no trouble in this study distinguishing between them. They do. Another interesting thing about dogs too is they have trouble distinguishing between shades of like red and orange and stuff. But they can distinguish between like reds and blues and stuff. So they can see reds and all that. So they too are not colorblind. They can see colors as well.
It would be nice if we could breed some cats that were more like programmed to want to please us rather than the kind of aloof animals we have today.
See, I don't know. I feel like that's part of the charm of cats is that they don't care.
I guess so.
All right. So moving on from dogs and cats to, is it actually possible to tip a cow?
Okay, hang on. Like, I was reading the notes before. What exactly does this mean? Is this where someone, because I don't feel, it would be, you get drunk, naturally. Yeah. You go to a field and you attempt to push the cow over and it can't get up? Is that the...
No, the general idea is that the cow would be sleeping then it's asleep and then you push it and so it just kind of, its legs are locked and it just topples over.
Because they sleep standing up.
Yeah, well, that is the general notion, but it turns out that one of the reasons why this is, I mean, as we'll get into, humans are pretty inventive and it's always possible to tip a cow. Like there's ways you could do it. But in the way that it's always described, when people describe it, it seems to be more of like a snipe hunt type thing.
Scientists going out to the field in an attempt to tip a cow.
Yeah, it is
drunk students.
Yeah, and exactly. And so these drunk students, there's no way you're going to tip the cow because for one thing, cows do not sleep standing up. They'll go into a restive state standing up, but they are quite alert even still. And because they are, herd animals and stuff, they're quite attuned to what's going on with the rest of the herd. So if there's any of the other cows, like if you're trying to sneak up and then some of the other cows, they're going to get really alert to that. And then it's going to alert all the standing cows that are, just kind of resting that, oh, there's something's in our field. Maybe we should, pay attention to this. So that's one thing, just sneaking up on a cow like that in the first place, really difficult.
It makes perfect sense. They are prey animals. This is what how they've evolved not to be horribly killed.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're going to try to come up on one standing up, they are awake to some extent and aware of what's going on around them. So that's one thing. And of course, if you're going to drive up your car, then they're all going to definitely know you're there. So you're going to have to walk up somehow.
You've got to go up in your Tesla. That's how you
be very
quiet.
Very sneaky. And then...
did you ever watch that TV show Weeds?
No.
This is one of the greatest scenes. Like, there's this middle-aged woman who becomes a drug dealer, and she approaches kind of the other established drug dealers, and she's surprised that they all drive Priuses. She's like, and this was 10 years ago, whatever, pre-Tesla and like early electric cars. She's like, why do you all drive Priuses? And the guy says, good for sneaking up on motherfuckers. I never laughed so hard at something. It's so good.
Yeah.
Recommended show, by the way. Very funny.
Yeah. So speaking of that sneaking up, so if you could actually sneak up to a cow that was standing there and they wouldn't know you were there, which is almost impossible.
Yeah.
So if by some miracle you actually manage this, you're standing next to the cow, can you actually physically, does a human physically have the strength to tip it? And so it turns out there has been a study done on looking at just this in 2005. Yes, absolutely is. A 2005 study by the University of British Columbia by one Dr. Margot Lilly and Tracy Boechler, maybe.
Sure.
So they look and they did the math and looked at it, and the average weight of like a Holstein dairy cow is 1,500 pounds. And so how much would it take to actually tip it at the optimal angle of force? And it turns out it's about 1,360 to 2,910 newtons of force is what would be needed. And for your reference, the average adult human can generate about 660 newtons of force. So if that was the case,
Almost.
2 people. If it was a completely static cow that didn't know you were there, like if you actually, it's static, right? This is a key part where it has to just have like its legs locked, like that idea, but it's not going to be static, because even if you manage to sneak up on it and you push it, it's gonna be fully alert that something's pushing it right then.
Yeah.
So that's not going to work for you, and definitely don't try that with a bull if you want to live.
Even cows can be pretty aggressive.
Yeah, even so, yeah, but definitely the bull, or if there's a bull in the field, that's like a pretty dangerous game to play.
Oh yeah, don't do that.
Yeah. So what about a non-static cow? What about we're given a cow's strength and ability to brace itself against your pushing? I mean, of course, it's probably just going to run off, but like if it was tried to brace against the pushing, what could it do? And Dr. Lilly, actually, they looked into this, and it turns out it looks
These
like
guys are going after that Ig Nobel Prize.
Yeah, totally. This may have even been one. I don't know. Maybe that's where I originally came across it. I don't know. But what they found was that it turns out about 5 adult humans could generate the necessary force to overcome the cow's ability to push back. But of course, the cow doesn't just have the ability to push back. It also has the ability to just, trot off, or just catch itself. So even if a cow is falling, they're actually not, they're fairly agile. They can just not fall over, usually. So the point of all this is, of course, the study determined that no, in all practical sense, it's not, cow tipping is not a thing, as is often depicted, even though there's always many a person who will tell you they've tipped cows or whatever. And usually it's more like the origin of the game is probably, somewhere in that, like the snipe hunt where you send someone to go, look for a mythical animal or whatever, just kind of a fun game to get someone who's gullible type of thing.
Yeah, I had a feeling this one would be a non-starter. Cows are really big. And
yeah,
I think I knew they didn't sleep standing up because they lie down in the rain, and then it's why would you sleep standing up if you can? Because you see cows lying down all the time. Horses, you never see. Horses sleep standing up, right?
I know that's a thing. I know that's a thing people say.
Have you ever seen a horse sitting down?
Absolutely. I used to have horses.
They sit down?
Oh yeah, I've seen them lay down, of course.
Okay.
But do they act?
I can literally not picture a horse lying down.
Really?
No, I mean they're always standing.
But I'm not actually sure if they are capable of sleeping standing up. Somewhat.
So we horses? Today I found out. Wow.
Yeah, don't recommend at all.
No, it sounds like an awful lot of work.
Oh, it is. And especially when you make your teenage son do all the work.
Yeah, a friend of mine had horses. But he loved horse riding, so there was that.
No, see, I hated horses and also taking care of them.
Yeah.
And all.
Why? Because your parents. So back.
I was the teenage son.
When you were a boy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, follow up. Are they actually capable of sleeping standing up? Because I'm not seeing like a thing. So, here we are. Moving on. Oh, so how did tipping the cow thing got really popular like in the late 1990s, with movies like Heathers and Tommy Boy. And there was a Beavis and Butthead episode called Cow Tipping in 1994 that really popularized it as a thing.
Unsurprisingly, I've seen none of these things.
Yeah, I've seen the Beavis and Butthead one, but
I have not.
Yeah.
I've seen, I think I've seen some Beavis and Butthead clips on YouTube or whatever, but
yeah. And Cars, the Pixar film, once again, they have tractor tipping.
Never seen that either.
Yeah. That's a good one. I liked that one. A lot of people didn't like that one, but I actually like that one a lot.
Okay. Aren't all Pixar films like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes anyway? So when it's, we didn't like that one, we only get 95%.
No, like Cars 2 is legitimately awful. Although Cars 3 is really good, so they brought it back around. But no, number 2 was just totally like a money grab. They sells a lot of merchandise, type thing. They clearly put not a lot of effort into it.
Listen, if I was in their position, that would be very, very tempting.
Yeah. Like,
we can make something that's guaranteed to be successful commercially.
Yeah.
I can take a few raps from the critics.
Yeah. So moving on from cow tipping to ostriches hiding their head in the sand. This is a thing, like, so they'll, bury their head in the ground and just hope things work out type of thing.
I'm gonna call this one as, this would be a terrible thing for an animal that's being hunted. Surely it would go extinct fairly quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it does, as we'll get into, there is one advantage to this for them, and it is, they do something like that, but it is just their first line of defense kind of thing. Okay. They don't actually bury their heads in anything. They're actually being quite alert and watching to make sure. But to begin with, turns out ostriches are like this amazing animal as far as, like, if you're a predator ostrich, probably not what you want to go after, because it turns out, one, they're super fast, and it turns out they're actually the fastest animal on 2 legs. They can been clocked as high as 45 miles per hour or 72 kilometers per hour. If they're being chased by a predator, they can go that fast. And not only that, but they can go about 30 miles per hour or about 48 kilometers per hour for about a half hour straight running, that is some quite endurance there.
That is super fast.
Yeah, and for a long time, there's not really, any real predators that can keep up with that for that distance. I mean, there are predators who can top them in the max speed, but it turns out,
how long is a cheetah going to run for?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know the exact number, but I know it's not very long before they give up. Yeah, and it turns out the other thing ostriches have going for them is, unlike a lot of these fast predators, the ostrich is really maneuverable. So it turns out they can use their wings. That is what they use their wings for, is to help them maneuver and turn more sharply than, some of the predators can do.
This is a dumb question, but they definitely can't fly, right?
No, I don't think so. They're really heavy. Big. So I would, they weigh a lot. So I would guess not. They pretty much, I think, just use the wings for maneuvering. And it turns out that even if you catch them, even if you're a predator and you actually manage to catch an ostrich, that's not perhaps going to work out for you, because ostriches have actually been shown to be able to kill full-grown lions. And this is a thing they have done because they have a big old claw on their feet, or whatever you want to call them, and then they kick really hard, and so they can kill. Of course, lions have been shown to kill ostriches sometimes, but ostriches sometimes kill lions. So, it's not, they're not an easy prey.
I did figure that the odd ostrich has been killed by a lion.
But
it's somewhat less surprising.
Definitely want to go for other creatures, but in the first place, running that long and stuff takes a lot of energy. So the ostriches, the first thing they do, and they actually have really exceptional eyesight and hearing as well. And so they often will detect the predator before the predator detects them. And so if they do this and they see a predator quite far away, they will lay down and they will put their heads on the ground, not burying their heads in anything. They just put it on the ground and they're just watching and listening and observing the predator. And this from a distance, they might just look like a bush or something, just in the African savanna to the predator. And then if the predator sees them and starts to go towards them, then the ostrich will just usually hop off and take off running. And then if the predator actually somehow manages to catch them, then they'll fight, and they're pretty formidable that way too. So
essentially what you're saying is they'd be really difficult to tip.
Yeah, impossible. And you wouldn't want to try, because they would probably kick you and kill you.
Yeah, they'd crush your chest in with their devastating claw.
Yeah, that's like the emus, that the Australian emu war we covered ages ago. Where the emus
won. The Australian military went to go out and kill all those emus, and the emus, they totally repelled it.
Yeah, and including, I can't remember what was those machine guns and stuff they were shooting them with, and like some of them just survived it. It was crazy.
Wow.
But in any event, moving on from that. So another common myth, which you'll also see in like a DreamWorks animated film, which you haven't seen, the Bee Movie.
I've seen Bee Movie. No, haven't really.
I was going to say, really, that one. So it turns out what you'll see in there is they make a joke about bumblebees not, flight violating the laws of physics. And that's like a thing some people say, which is weird, because if something actually violated the laws of physics,
then it's not a thing.
Yeah, it's either not a thing, or it would be like every physicist would be studying this thing to try to figure out what's going on.
I feel that things that defy the law of physics, the things we find far out in the universe, like some
much
weird
bigger
black holes or radiation. It's not a bumblebee.
Yeah, but this is nevertheless a prevalent myth. And so where did it get started? And it's not, the first known reference to something like it was a 1934 book published called Le Vol des Insectes. It was a French book, obviously.
Yeah.
And it just makes...
Impeccable pronunciation there. We're so good at this.
Yeah. It makes a reference to not just bumblebees, but insects in general. Turns out the assistant of the author is Antoine Magnan, maybe?
Sure.
And his assistant, André Saint-Legoux.
Yeah,
okay.
Legoux.
Sure.
And I think in French it's son.
Okay. But, yeah, so
that's all I know.
The point being, the assistant did some math. Turns out insects, according to them, shouldn't be able to fly. Like they didn't say violating the laws of physics. It was just a fascinating thing is how can they fly when the math shows that their wings and they're, looking at their weight and their wing size, they shouldn't be able to fly. And so this is the first known reference of it. It's not known if this is how the myth got started. Like maybe some teachers read this and started, telling it to their students or something. Was this an
actual science book or a fiction book? Did you say?
No, this was a science book.
Okay, good. At least
so, I mean, not exactly an international bestseller here. So that's definitely, not how the masses learned of this myth. But either way, somehow that was the first known reference and it's sort of spread since there.
Okay.
So what was wrong with the calculations? And it turns out, of course, that the sort of obvious fact is that the insects don't fly like an airplane flies. So their wing to weight ratio isn't necessary. If you're using the same sort of metrics there, like the size of wing and stuff, it's not really applicable because they fly in a very different way. And turns out, fly in quite a fascinating way. There's a Chinese scientist, Liang Zheng, and his team in 2001 used lasers and tiny mirrors glued to the backs of the bees.
Dude.
To see how they actually fly. And other research
science done with lasers is just better science.
Absolutely. And you're gluing tiny little mirrors to these bees. That's kind of cool too. And so there had been studies before looking at sort of how bumblebees fly and stuff and look at how they actually do that given their size and their small their mass and their small wing size. But it used tethered bees. They would tether the bees, and it turns out they don't fly quite the same way when they're tethered. And so this way they get to fly a little more naturally, and using the lasers, they could, see how exactly their wings were moving and stuff. And of course, there's been others with high-speed cameras and stuff now that have looked at this. And it turns out bees and a lot of insects, they actually rotate their wings as they're flying, and it creates these little pockets of low air pressure and also little eddies and above the wings, which is, you can just Google this and you can see videos of it and stuff. And it turns out this creates quite a bit of lift. Way more than you would normally get. Of course, if you were a static wing plane flying through, you'd need a lot bigger wing to lift that amount of mass. But the way they do it creates quite a bit of lift, and they can fly, and it does not violate the laws of physics in any way.
Shocker.
Yeah, I know, right?
I don't know how a bumblebee flies, but I know it flies.
Yeah.
And I know
exactly.
Yeah.
That is the thing. It's like anyone who would say it violates the laws of physics. Well, but here's a bumblebee flying. So no.
See, listen, Tom, you probably haven't stumbled on something no one's discovered before. So let's just calm down.
Yeah.
That was fun. I see there are no more. Are we out of...
There's a bunch others I wanted to look at, but I thought this was enough for today. There's the ones like solid. Chameleons. Chameleons commonly to change color. The idea is they change color to match their background. It turns out the reasons they change color is actually more to do with other things than that. And there's a bunch of other ones like that, but I don't know. I didn't find them quite as interesting, so I stopped there.
I'm sure we cover some of them on our YouTube channel, which people can check out. Yeah. Just Google search Today I Found It or YouTube search Today I Found Out, and you'll find that.
Yeah.
Should we do some reviews?
Sure.
We haven't. It's been a while since we published an episode, but people still review us. And whenever we don't for a while, I always see people are, 4 stars, 3 stars. I like the show, but you could do more. Yeah. Anyway, but that's not the case.
And we get a lot of comments on YouTube and whatnot, people asking, when's the next episode?
True. And where's the video? Which we're still very much trying to sort out for my sins. Rustic Tidbits says, Great transition from Today I Found Out. I'm a huge fan of Today I Found Out, so it was natural. It was a natural transition to listen to this podcast. Being a fan of podcasts, I love this one, and it will make a great addition to my weekly rotation of podcasts. Thank you, Rustic Tidbits. Rustic Tidbits would make an amazing name for like an antique store.
That would actually.
Rustic Tidbits. Angel Kalina says, "Oh, this is awesome. 5 stars. I found the YouTube channel first. I subscribed before Biographics and started listening just recently. Biographics is another YouTube channel I have, which you can check out as well. Just YouTube search that. Professional podcasting. Plugging. You got to do it. I've experienced the episodes in reverse order, and I've loved the interesting facts interspersed with casual banter. It's wonderful."
I'll keep going. I thought that was
I heard a sharp intake of breath there from you.
I had a question.
Hit me.
Yeah, so if you listen to them in reverse order, did they get worse? That's what I'm wondering.
Ooh.
I haven't actually listened to the early episodes, and I assume they're much worse. I sure hope so.
Do you think there's like a curve of if you graph them out from like early episodes where people get started and they're bad because people are learning what to do, then they get better as people become more confident. Then as a podcast goes on and the podcasters become lazy, it drifts back to badness.
I would hope not in our case.
Oh, we're not old enough to have got bad yet.
Okay.
But we've got that to look forward to. Angel Kalina continues, "It's wonderful to put on and do other things, house cleaning, dishes, cross stitch, etc. Keep it up, guys. You're awesome. Thank you very much. You want to do one more or leave it there?" For some reason, we got a bunch of these in early January, so I'm not sure if we got a little bump somewhere from that. But I even go around, Sharon, 94. "I've really enjoyed listening to these 5 stars. She says, I even go around telling people about the things I've heard on this podcast. I, of course, pretend that I'm knowledgeable." Oh. But then she says, "And then I tell them about your podcast. Keep up the good work." That's nice. Yeah.
That's good.
I mean, I feel like this podcast is fantastic for that kind of water cooler banter that you can bring up at work.
Oh, yeah.
But always reference your sources and tell people about our podcast.
No, see, that's the problem.
That's
people
the problem.
No.
What are you listening to? Nothing. NPR.
Yeah.
We've got a bunch of other 5 stars and then a 4 star, but that's good.
What number are we up to now on the reviews?
278. So what is it? 22 more, and we'll give away $300 Amazon gift card.
Yeah,
that got expensive real fast. Yeah.
Well, and that grew 200 to 300 seems to have happened quite quickly. This must be incentivizing more. People are like, "Oh, 300. I'll take it."
Well, it also makes sense. I really thought this was quite a clever way to incentivize reviews, because if you do it now, I assume, I don't know, we're going to give away 400 at 400?
Presumably.
As long as we don't get up into the, 20,000 reviews.
Yeah, no. Wouldn't.
No. When we get to 300 reviews, we're going to give away a $300 Amazon gift card. You don't have to leave it on iTunes. We just use that as our benchmark, like our
we actually have like a lot more reviews if you add up everything. But yeah, just the US iTunes is the benchmark.
Yeah,
just for when the contest trigger happens.
And we'll troll through Australia, UK, Canada, Germany, wherever you guys are, we'll find them. And then also Stitcher, Podcast Addict, the other places I don't remember. This stuff. We'll do that. I have no feedback prepared because I haven't even listened to the last episode we recorded because it was so recently. So I don't know what we had to follow up, but I haven't done it. Sorry.
So next time I'm sure we'll have stuff.
Double feedback episode.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. Subscribe for the thrill of Can Horses Sleep Standing Up?
That's true.
I'm quite looking forward to that, actually, despite my sarcastic tone.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure. Nice to do this so recently after the last one. Mm-hmm. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening, everybody. You're getting a nose burner.